Hey everyone, welcome to She Knows Arsenal. My name is Jessica and I'm your host, and you can follow me on Twitter at @it'sJessino. So before you guys make fun of me and talk about my sweatshirt, I know it's big, I know it's kind of gross, but like I'm chilling today. I definitely was gonna always come on and talk to you guys about something, but after this, I'm just gonna spend the rest of the day watching football. So may not be the greatest look here. This is like paint. It's not food. But besides my appearance, I'm actually feeling really well. I hope you guys are feeling well. And yeah, how are you guys? Let me know in the chat box how you guys are doing after our win yesterday. A win is a win. I'm going to celebrate it. I'm going to feel good about it. Look, after this long season of just being like super negative for me, I'm going to just bask in this win as long as I possibly can. But let's talk about the real news. So let me just pull it up really quick. I had it up. I don't know where it went. So Fabrizio Romano, the guy, when he says something is happening, it's happening. I mean, sometimes he's not as reliable as maybe he's been in the past, but I believe him when he says this, that Arsenal are working since March to extend Emile Smith Rowe's contract. There's optimism to complete the agreement soon. The player is happy and open to stay. It's a 5-year contract on the table. Croydon De Bruyne. I mean, this is definitely something. Yeah, Monster, I will message you. I will. As long as you're not going to be bantering me and talking about how I should be a Chelsea fan. But yeah, you guys, Croydon De Bruyne. I mean, this is definitely a move that the Arsenal hierarchy they needed to do. I mean, one thing that I can give them credit for is that they have been trying to get our younger players that are talented young players on new contracts. And that's been something in the past that hasn't really been happening. We just kind of let them run their deals down, or we get stressed out towards the end and try to throw a contract at them and they don't sign them. So for me, having Martinelli on a longer term contract, Bukayo Saka, Emile Smith Rowe, Balogun, these are good signs. These are good signs. I mean, it's yet to be seen what they can do in terms of bringing in quality. But in terms of retaining the value and getting our young players on longer term contracts, I can give them credit for that. Emile Smith Rowe, by a long mile, was our man of the match from yesterday's game. And I love Bukayo Saka. He needs a rest. But also Emile Smith Rowe needs a rest too. For him to have come off against I think it was West Brom. He came off of the pitch and had some sort of hamstring issue, and then to play in this game and play the way that he did play. I'm looking at these kids and I'm like, if we want them to last to 25 years old and get to their prime and be full stars for the Arsenal team, we definitely need to start resting them and giving them the proper complement of players around them so that they can be successful. I just think there's so much reliance on these young players, and it's just not okay. Like, it's literally not okay. So for me, I'm very happy to hear that we're trying to get him on another contract and it's looking optimistic. But at the same time, I need better players around our young players so that they can have a long future and not look like Bellerin. Because to me, Bellerin is a really good example of somebody that has too many minutes in his legs, one injury and boom, he looks like a completely different player. And Bellerin is 25 years old. So we don't want that to happen to Bukayo Saka. We don't want that to happen to Emile Smith Rowe. So the first step is to get them on longer term contracts. The second step is to get better quality players around them so that they can play less, so that they can play more in the future. So how are you guys feeling about Emile Smith Rowe being offered a 5-year contract to stay at Arsenal Football Club? Let's see. Bowie the Cat says, good afternoon, Jess. Hope you're well. I am well. Besides this sweatshirt, I'm feeling good. I am. Dev says, feeling good after the win. It feels good to win. Yeah, it does. It really, really does. AK Gunner says Smith Rowe, star. Yeah, he's definitely a star. And he likes a game against Chelsea, I guess. I mean, that makes sense because they rejected him or got rid of him. He was originally a part of like the Chelsea system. And when he was released, we came and gave him another chance. So I think that may have something to do with why he shows up against Chelsea, and I love it. Deb says, not too worried about ESR signing than I was with Saka signing. Having Saka and ESR and Martinelli sign is great for the club. It is, and it's good for the reputation of Arsenal as somewhere where young players can grow, like, and develop over time. So for me, that's really important because I think the youth development side of Arsenal has kind of fallen off a little bit in the last couple of years. I mean, at a certain point in our team, we only had like Iwobi and Maitland-Niles in the squad. And although they're good players, neither of them, to me, were up to the standard of like some of the youth that we've seen over the years. So to see well-rounded, skillful, just monster kids like Saka and ESR come through the ranks, to me is just, I couldn't be happier. RBK says, need to get Keto Taylor Hart signed down. Look, I've heard a lot about this kid. I haven't really seen a lot of him, but what I do know of him is he's like a left-sided forward type of player, maybe like a Leroy Sané. He's tall and he's a monster as well. So hopefully we get him signed to a new contract, and Aziz too, because I think his contract is running down. So those are maybe the two next ones that they need to focus on. Bowie says ESR was saying he was exhausted after the game yesterday. I'm sure he is. Like, the kid hasn't really played a lot of minutes, a lot of senior minutes. He played for Huddersfield, but even they, monitored his minutes and gave him limited time because they knew he was a young kid. So I think ESR over the summer maybe need to get into the gym a little bit. I think he's a little light at the moment. And then he also just needs some rest. He's definitely one of those. Rancid says Jack Wilshere. You guys know I am a huge Jack Wilshere fan, and I think his career just left so much to be desired because he was one of the most talented kids I've ever seen. And for him to be where he is now in his career, to me, is just like, you look at all the minutes that were put into his legs from Arsenal and from England at such a young age. We definitely don't want that same thing to happen to ESR and Bukayo Saka. New Dawn Game says, more pump for Arsenal than for poor ESR. Hope the contract does him justice. Me too. Optimist Rhino says, sweatshirt looks comfortable. It is. It really, really is. Gunnar STL says, I'm afraid Arteta needs to win is coming at an expense of Saka and ESR's minutes. Yeah, we'll talk about that in a second because there's something I kind of want to talk about in a couple of minutes that kind of leans into that conversation. AK Gunner says, I hope Aziz and Balogun can join the Starboy group with ESR, Martinelli, and Saka. But I agree with your comment before that Arteta might not feel comfortable with a young squad. I don't think he does. I definitely think that Arteta maybe wants more experienced quality players, but those come at a cost. And because I don't feel like he's a manager, I don't think just getting him better players at a like 27, 28 years old prime players is going to really help him, because I don't think he's good enough as a coach at the moment. I don't think it's just the quality. I think Arteta needs to improve as a manager. 100%. It's not just because he gets a better squad doesn't necessarily mean that the wins are just going to come. For a long time, I felt like he just needs better players, but now I just feel like it's a combination of needing better players and becoming a better manager. So if you bring in players that are younger and maybe need some time to develop, then by the time that hopefully Arteta gets, hopefully by the time he becomes a better manager, it'll all add up. But right now, if you give him like a Thomas Partey per se, a player in his prime, 27 years old, has Arteta been able to get the best out of him? Not really, so it's not just about him getting better players at a better age or, at an older age or whatever. He needs to improve as well, so I think he may not be comfortable with the younger squad, but he may need to deal with one so that he can grow with his players too as a manager. Sean says, blessed day, Jess. Hey, how are you? Unfortunately, you're in the minority. Most of the fan base want youngsters, Martinelli to play every game. No rest for the youth. Yeah, I kind of said this the other day that I feel like next season, I would prefer to see only one or two of the younger players in the squad at a time, because they need to play less to play more in the future. The You just don't really see. I mean, I would say, like, if you look at somebody like Dortmund, they play a lot of really young players. They'll play like 2 to 3 in the squad at a time. Under 21 players, that's what I would consider somebody to be like a youth. And but the rest of the complement of players around them are experienced, and we don't really have that. So to have 3 or 4 of them in a squad at a time, surrounded by players like El Neni and Holding, that's not really going to help them out. So for me, it's not that I don't want to see them, it's I want to see them in the future. I want to see them when they're 24, 25 years old. So I do think that they can withstand a significant amount of minutes, but not to the extent in which I think certain fans want them to play, which is every minute of every game. I'd rather ease them into the squad so that we can enjoy them later and for the sake of their own career. So something else that I kind of wanted to talk about was, let me pull it up really quick. I had wrote some notes on the press conference. So on May 12th, Arteta was asked if one of the criteria he uses to judge his success is whether he gets the most out of his players. And then the journalist kind of switched the question and said, have they given their maximum? So when Arteta was asked that, he said, with the majority of them, yes. And I think it was pretty obvious that he was answering in terms of getting the most out of them. But it came off as though he was saying that have the players given their maximum. And it made it seem like he was criticizing the players for not giving their maximum. And then he had that kind of uncomfortable presser last night saying that his answers on that day were being taken out of context. But I think the most interesting part of this dialogue is Arteta saying that you can't push some of these players to another level. They can't evolve past this level. I think he's gotten the most out of players like Holding, El Neni, and Chambers, but those players don't really improve us, and we've spent a lot of time on them, and we also rely on them more than we should. Basically, we're relying on players that really should be squad players, that they're starting more games than they probably should be. And watching the game yesterday, although I think it was a really good defensive performance. I'm happy for the win. 3 points is 3 points. But we're an 8th place team, and we're mid-table, but I haven't seen another mid-table team play against Chelsea the way that we did. The way in which we kind of bunkered in, and it wasn't the game plan. I have a hard time believing that this was the game plan. So for us to be pushed back like that, this is the 4th place team versus the 8th place team. That to me is it's shocking, and it might as well have been like Wickham Wanderers versus Chelsea, the way that we played that game. And I understand like more in a cup final, but that's something that definitely needs to be addressed. We definitely need better players. And that may seem simplistic and obvious, but we need them, and we need them bad. The quality of this squad is, for me, diabolical. The players that we rely on, Holding, Chambers, Marie, El Neni, are probably like lower level Premier League players. I mean, if we're honest, and that's not to be like, if you play on a championship side or on a relegation side, you're still a good player. It takes a lot to get to this level. But for Arsenal, a team that is expected to be in the top 4, to be relying on players that probably could only get into like a Newcastle side or a Fulham side, and those are the players that we're relying on, that doesn't add up. And the players that we should be relying on, like Aubameyang, Lacazette, Willian, Pepe, Thomas, David Luiz, Xhaka, Bellerin, are either out of form or don't show up or are injured for a significant amount of time. Then you arrive to like our young core. Saka, ESR, Martinelli, Gabriel, and Tierney. That's 5 players. Take that in, you guys. 5 players that you can name in our team right now that are pretty consistent, that can play at a high level, and they're all like 20, 22 years old, 22 years and younger. That's our core. This job is massive. It's massive. The players that we can rely on are players that should probably be playing on lower level Premier League teams. And the players that we pay the big bucks to show up aren't showing up. This job is out of the world massive. When we talk about a mass exodus, it's really, really real. And the job that Edu has to do to recruit quality players for Arsenal to come in, I mean, this is do or die for him. It really, really is, because for our best players to be under the age of like 22 and under, and there's only 5 of them, that is so, so poor from Arsenal. I mean, we've been talking about a rebuild, but the rebuild actually needs to start. It's kind of started in January when we got rid of the unsellables, but now Edu needs to figure out a way to get kind of turn over some of these players that are just not showing up, and also move on players that are mediocre. Because if we're relying on players that probably only play for Newcastle, we're going to get Newcastle results. And that's pretty much what we've seen. So putting on in their young players at that, how do you guys feel about, the likelihood of Arteta and Edu getting this job done? Because it's not really just about this one summer. Obviously, it's going to take time. But I think a lot of the work has to be done in the summer. And the excuse of like the Euros is going to hurt us. No, it's not. We have about 4 players that'll probably go to the Euros. And I see other teams like Manchester United that will have 8 or 9 players out. So the Euros to me is not an excuse. You'll have a preseason. You need to implement your system. But what is the likelihood of these guys getting it done with the inexperience that they have? They have 5 players that should be really playing for Arsenal. Thomas, I would put in that group because he needs time and he's world class, but he's been inconsistent. Maybe you could drag Pepe out and put him in that, but still, this job is massive. Let me see what you guys are saying. New Dawn Game says ESR, Saka, Tierney, Xhaka. I don't have a 5th one. Yeah. Conroy, hey Jess, love your content. Keep up the work. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. BX Gunner says Arteta was average at best as a player. Can we really expect him to be the change when he's never hit those heights? I mean, Jose Mourinho was a crap player, and so is Arsene Wenger. So for me, it's not really about what kind of player they are or they were. For me, it's just more about, can he improve as a manager? I mean, we've been kind of fed this narrative that Arteta is the best and brightest young manager out there, but he's not really hitting those heights. So for me, it's more about, can he improve to be the manager that we think that we've been marketed, that manager can he become that manager? But him being an average player to me doesn't really mean much in my eyes. Bowie the Cat says not being in CL or EL will hurt us in the transfer market. I mean, I think it'll just mean that we'll have to be smarter. We can still recruit quality players outside of Europe. Other teams have done it for years. It's just a matter of can Edu identify those players, and will Arteta be able to identify them as well, since he's such a big part of the transfer process? C. Walder says all those young important players love Arteta. That's a really good point, that in one time or another, a lot of those players have spoken very highly of Arteta. So to me, it's not very surprising that they perform the best in Arteta's system, because they've absorbed it and it really does fit their style. They're modern players, and a lot of the older players that we have are just not, they're not that. They're just not that. They're not very flexible. They're kind of like, you need a specific system to play for these players, like Aubameyang. He's a very specific player. Willian, specific. Lacazette, specific. Xhaka, same thing. ESR, Saka, Tierney, they can play in multiple systems in different ways, different positions. So yeah, they thrive under Arteta, whereas some of the older players don't. Rancid says, Tom of TGT did an amazing fan poll. Yeah, I heard about it. It seems like it was really successful. A lot of people have the opinion that we have to sell half of the squad. I mean, we do. I mean, that's the reality. Like, they're either not showing up, the players that we rely on, or we're relying on players that probably should be playing for relegation sides or lower level Premier League sides. So it's true. We do, it needs a mass exodus is really what it needs to be. Joseph says the club's lost 70 million this season. We have United size wage bill, but Southampton results. I expect management to sell who they can, probably buy Ryan Bertrand and pocket the rest. I'm not sure. I think they will definitely bring in players because they have to. Last season they brought in Thomas Partey and Gabriel, and I don't see why we wouldn't buy players now. I would expect a Ryan Bertrand to come, but to pocket the rest. To my knowledge, I don't think KSE has actually taken money out of the club like FSG have, or maybe the Glazers have. So I don't really see them pocketing the money. Abdallah says, big up Jess, sorry for ranting yesterday. I was just vexed that we didn't turn up against you guys. No, for sure. Like, you're fine. Yeah, for sure. New Dawn Game says, great players don't equal great managers and vice versa. Arteta needs to get this window right, though, and deliver a huge improvement by December to keep his job, for sure. Aslan says, for our summer transfer deals for in and outs, Edu is under the spotlight and under pressure more than Arteta. But Arteta needs to be a part of this as well. I think if we don't get it right, it speaks on Arteta too, because he wants to be a big part of the transfer talks. And, he's the one that's going to players and convincing them that this project is working. And I think it's going to be even more difficult this summer to do that, because before the project hadn't started, he was able to talk to Thomas and Gabriel and convince them to come based on a project that had not started. But now that it started and it looks like it's failing or it's not doing well, now he's really going to have to go with the lip service. So I do agree that it's about Edu, but it's also about Arteta, because he needs to pitch this project to people and let people know that he knows what he's doing. The younger players believe in him, but will he be able to get some more experienced players? Maybe like if he wanted to get like a Buendia or an Awa, can he convince them that this is the place for them to be, even a Basuma? Yes, Abdallah, you can be a mod. Just message me on Twitter and we'll figure it out, a schedule for that and how we're going to make that work. But yeah, for sure, you can be a mod. Seawalder says, I think KSE are going to be buying some sorry presents. I still want them out, but I think they realize they've been naughty and have some making up to do. I mean, that's the thing. We have to continue to put pressure on them, because I do think it's unlikely that they sell the club. But if they know that look at what Manchester United fans have done. They've hurt the Manchester United brand so much that they're losing sponsorships left and right. And those types of things get noticed by the ownership. So if we continue, to make noise and let them know that we're unhappy, it may put pressure on them to make sure that they continue to spend. And then it's up to Edu and Arteta to spend it on the right people, or the right players. Austin said Smith Rowe, Jamaica. Smith Rowe, Jamaica. Smith Rowe, Jamaica. Are you saying Smith Rowe is Jamaican? What are you saying? Abdallah, just message me on Instagram then. At itchjacino, the same thing that's up here on the screen. Just message me there then. AK Gunner, points since Christmas. I've seen this post from Orbinho that we've taken the third most amount of points since Christmas in the league. Because we never showed up in the beginning. We never showed up in the beginning. I mean, those 7 to 8 games where we decided not to show up for the season really, really hurt us. For me, I felt like the players had down tools. At that point, we were playing some of the more senior players more often. Thomas was not really that available in that time. So it was like Xhaka, El Neni, who El Neni's not really an issue, but I remember at that time it was like Lacazette, Aubameyang, Willie in front line, and it was dead Maitland-Niles was still playing at that time. So you could sense the unhappiness in that. I know that some people will say, well, you can't tell. But they weren't playing for the manager at that point. They really, really weren't. And so they took a mental and physical vacation from the league for 7 to 8 games. And it's really, really cost us. But what does that say to us, after December or after Christmas? What does that say, that we've taken more points than some of the other big teams in that time? You could look at it and say that Arteta has improved since Boxing Day. And the biggest change for me was adding Emile Smith Rowe and Odegaard in the team. But what does that say about his stubbornness to continue on with certain players from the beginning of the season until he was basically on the brink of being sacked? It took him until we got to like 15th place to start playing people that we had been begging for since the beginning of the season. So I think it says 2 things. It says that he needs to not be stubborn and to continue on with things that don't work and stop relying on players that have done absolutely nothing since the time that he's been here and go with what works. And it also says that there's maybe some proof of concept in the way that he's wanted to play since Boxing Day. So I think it says 2 things. Austin is saying Rowe's dad is half. Hey, I mean, I don't know. Does that mean that he can play for Jamaica? I doubt he will. I think he'll get a cap sooner rather than later for England. But that's interesting. Austin, what do you think of Lacazette getting a 1-year contract extension? I mean, is that happening? If so, I mean, it really just depends. There's certain players like Lacazette and David Luiz that I'm not really like pushing them out the door per se, because we've been ran so poorly. I would understand why we may need to keep some of those players in the team to fill gaps and to make sure that we don't have like, I worry about having just Balogun, Martinelli, and Aubameyang as striker options. But for me, striker is not a position that we need to focus on. I feel like we need to focus on center midfield, some sort of attacking midfielder, right back, and right-sided center back. That's what I think is important. So if we're not going to buy a striker and all we're going to have is Balogun, Martinelli, and Aubameyang, I think that's risky. So if he's getting it, let me know if that's come out in the last couple of minutes that it's happening. But as a concept or as an idea, I wouldn't be like dying. He definitely needs to go at some point. But if he got a 1-year extension, then it just is what it is. David Luiz too. If he got an extension, it wouldn't be like the worst thing. For me, there's bigger fish to fry. Yo-Yo said, Arteta's refused to favor on-field relationships and cost this club this season. It's on the manager. Yeah, I think we saw that. I think in the West Ham game, that's where I really was questioning Arteta because, and before that, but we had figured out what worked. We had really figured out what worked. It was Lacazette, Emile Smith Rowe, Saka, and Pepe. That was a good formula for Arsenal in terms of like offense and scoring goals and creating chances. And when we played against West Ham, I thought he made a really big mistake putting Aubameyang in there because we had Lacazette and Aubameyang, and those two playing together this season has not worked. So to try to introduce it back in, what to me just was like, what are you doing? We figured out what works. Just keep doing what works. And his want to bring Aubameyang back in, to me, was a mistake. So I agree with that. There's some relationships that have really worked for us that Arteta has refused to keep together for one reason or another. And it has cost him. Nikosana, I'm so sorry if I botched that. I really am. Jess, please do a squad building pod where you build a team you think we should have next season based on the players we are linked with. Keep in mind that we're probably going to sell maybe 4 or 5 players in and bring 4 in. It's funny that you should say that. I am planning one not as we speak, because obviously I'm here, but I am in the process of putting together a How Do We Fix Arsenal series for the next couple of months. And so it will consist of a keep or sell podcast, as you're talking about. I already have our George, who's Saliba season. He's going to be on there with a couple of other people. So we'll go through all the players that we're talking about. Should they stay or should they go? And we'll talk about what fees we should release them for, who we should keep, things like that. I'll also have an academy/youth podcast where we'll talk about, what youth players could potentially fill in squad positions or be key figures for us next season. We'll also talk about how to fix Arsenal from a financial standpoint at KSE. Also, we'll do a tactical podcast and a by the numbers podcast. I'm hoping that I can get Scott on there for that one. And then a big transfer show where we talk about actual transfers coming in a little bit later. So it's going to be a series. We'll talk about Arsenal from different aspects. I'll have good guests on. So look forward to that. Like the video, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on those. But it's going to be a series, talking about all aspects of how to fix Arsenal for next season. Joseph says, do you want AMN back? I don't. I think I would actually sell him before I sell Willock. The reason why is because he doesn't want to be at Arsenal, and anybody who doesn't want to be here is not somebody that I want at the club. I think he's a very useful player. He has a lot of talent and he's very athletic. And I think he'd be really good as like a right wing back or something like that. I still have questions around him as a midfielder, but if he doesn't want to be at Arsenal, then I don't want him back, and I think Arteta sees him as some sort of fullback and he doesn't want to play there. So, I wish him the best if he leaves. Belvashwan says, hey, Jess. Hey, Belvashwan. How are you? Let's see. New Dawn Games asks, with less money and no Europe, should we be looking lower down for EFL players this summer? There's precedent with Vardy, Ollie Watkins, etc. I personally would bring in players from the championship. I like Buendia. I know you're saying lower down in the EFL. So see who's lower down. I mean, maybe we should do a podcast about that. Players lower down in the EFL, maybe not from the teams that are coming up. But you guys know I'm a big advocate for bringing in players from the championship because I think they have a little bit of an edge to them that other players from other leagues don't have. And I think, as you said, there's been good examples of players coming from lower leagues and doing well in the Premier League. You just have to scout them right. And so some of my some of the people that I'd like to see come into the club do play in the championship right now. So I actually wouldn't mind that at all. Velvashwan says, fun fact, if you want to win the league, sell your players to Arsenal. Look at Lille. You're so mean. That's not nice. Sean says, do you support any other teams in any other leagues? Yes, I support I support Dortmund from the Bundesliga. I have for a very long time. I used to think they were really similar to Arsenal, but they're actually well run and we're not. But I love Dortmund, and I support LAFC in the MLS. So those are my teams. Not a big La Liga fan or Ligue 1 fan. They're not leagues that I watch unless there's big games on. But the Bundesliga I do like. I think it's a quality league. I'd actually like us to scout more in that league if we could. So you meant Championship, League 1, and maybe League 2. Well, I'm not sure because I don't watch those leagues enough to know. But the Championship, yes. So maybe that's something, a scouting pod that I can do on that and see if there's players in those leagues that would be good for Arsenal. I think that would be a good place to look for young players to bring in and develop, because a lot of young players play in those leagues and come up. You look at somebody like Eze, that played for, I think he was at Queen's Park Rangers and then was able to move up to Crystal Palace and has done a really good job, so maybe we could, but League 1 and League 2 is something that I haven't really looked at, so I wouldn't be an expert. Zach said, yo, hope you're all well. I'm well. I hope you are too. Renee Black, who's my mom, says good morning or morning all. AK Gunner, should we keep Willock because currently we do not have enough goals for midfield, or would you rather buy a goal-scoring midfielder? When we do our squad building pod, we're going to have to talk about this. I mean, Willock is doing the best on his loan. and would probably get us the most out of some of the players that we want to move on from, the players that the younger players like a Guendouzi or Ainsley Maitland-Niles. He's probably the most sellable asset right now. But when I look at our midfield options, I don't see a lot, so if Ceballos leaves, if Xhaka leaves, and we only bring in like a Basuma and even a Odegaard, we're still light in midfield. We're an injury away from looking around like what's going on. So Willock can play in the pivot, and he can also play in a more advanced role. So he might be somebody that we keep, and we could probably keep him for another year and keep his value up. So it's something to consider. It's something to consider. Yo-Yo says Benrahma is an example of it not working. Has it not worked? I mean, I think he's had some bright spots at West Ham, but I think from a player profile and system aspect, it doesn't add up. I was shocked that he went to West Ham under Moyes because they don't play with like tricky wingers or players that are like, they play with runners. They're all about like power and pace and physicality. And Benrahma is very much like a more tricky wingerish type of forward creator player. And so I don't really think he fits in. So for me, I think that's more of just like maybe bad profile, not profiling a player correctly. But as of now, maybe we could say it's not working, but I don't think it's because he can't play in the Premier League. I just think West Ham probably wasn't the right place for him to go. C. Wilder says, I think we should pounce on the fact that Willock is having a goal streak just before the transfer window. I mean, maybe we have to. Maybe we have to. Maybe bringing maybe a buyback clause is something that we should think about just in case, but hey, what does our midfield look like if we sell Ainsley Maitland-Niles, if we sell Willock, if Xhaka leaves, if El Neni leaves, if Ceballos is going? We need to make sure that we have more than just Thomas and maybe Basuma, so something to consider. Jacob says, Rob Holding came from lower leagues and fans don't like him. I don't care if they come from the lower leagues. I understand what you're saying. Some people just don't rate him because he came from like Bolton. But my issue with Rob Holding is that he's just not good enough. He can come from lower leagues and be good enough, but Rob Holding has not improved. And some of that has to do with his injuries, but he just hasn't improved to a level where we can say like, okay, this has worked out. I think it's worth it sometimes to take a gamble on players that play in lower leagues. But this gamble for me has not worked. He, to me, has stayed a lower level Premier League / maybe a championship level player. And but I do think Arsenal fans are not really accepting of players from other leagues or lower leagues. But I don't think that should keep us from scouting them. If they do well, then maybe Arsenal fans will change, but it's just not something that we haven't really done it a lot, so maybe it's something we should consider. Let me see. Okay. Yo-Yo says Willock is Rumdeuter. Wow, probably really bottled that. And so won't fit in Arteta's defensive setup. He should be sold. Learn from what happened to AMN. True. I mean, yeah, if he's not going to play, then sell him for sure. New Dawn Game says the first league I was obsessed with was Serie A in the 90s. I mean, it really was a big league like back then. It was one of the best leagues, if not, it was by far the best league, I think, at that time. When it was like the old AC Milan was like that thing, and he said, I always flip-flop between all of the Seven Sisters, Golden Age, Italian football. Yeah, for sure. I mean, what happened to that league? Why is it not as big as it used to be? I think what's interesting now is teams like AC Milan and Inter are coming back into the fold, and Juventus looks like it's losing a little bit of its shine. But why is that league fallen off so much? New Dawn Game says, Party has shown that we need a proper midfield partner alongside him. he gets corralled and exhausted and is isolated. Yeah. I think we need he needs a partner, but we need a complement of midfielders. I think we need at least 3 that can play in those positions a little bit deeper in the midfield. So if we had like Basuma and Thomas, maybe we could keep somebody like Xhaka just to rotate with them. I'm not sure if Xhaka is the type of player that would be okay with playing a rotational role, but if he would take it, I wouldn't be like upset with that. I think we need somebody else that can play deeper in the midfield, more similar to an Awa as well, somebody who's ball progressor, that's a little bit more, what's the word? Because Basuma is more of a destroyer. Thomas is more of a box to box, but Awa is like a pure midfielder. And I think he gives me like Gundogan kind of vibes where he's low to the ground. He can keep the ball, keep the moves ticking. He can play off of the left as well. So he can play a little bit more progressive. So for me, I think you need different profiles that can play deeper in your midfield to progress the ball in different ways. And we need more than just one partner for party. We need a complement of midfielders. That's why I'm a little bit worried about this summer, because we haven't had a lot of midfield options this season. But if Ceballos leaves and one of Elneny and Xhaka leaves and we only bring in Basuma, I hope we bring in Basuma, then what do we do? What do we do if Arteta doesn't want to bring back Guendouzi, if Torreira is sold, if Willock is sold, what do we do then? How do we make sure we have enough midfielders to sustain the entirety of the season and also address other positions? Balbashwan says, give us Xhaka and we give you Gini Wijnaldum. You say you rate Gini. I mean, I rate him as well, but not for that age. Yo-Yo said, Santi replacement has been long overdue. Exactly. Belvashwan says, good thing is Awa is available in the summer for 30 million euros. I mean, I see that some people are saying he's not consistent, he's overrated. I get that. I understand that. And I'm just maybe an Awa-like player. I don't know who that player is. Maybe can do some research on that. But an Awa-like player would be beneficial to us in the midfield in a deeper position. We need somebody who can keep the ball ticking, who is press resistant, who is lower to the ground. I think we just need different profiles of midfielders, in that complement of midfield, so somebody like Awa. I know he's not perfect. He's somebody that maybe falls off, when the team is not playing well, so maybe not exactly him, but somebody of that profile. Even like a Fekir, he would fit that profile. Fekir also has injury issues, maybe like a Renato Sanchez as well, another one, injury issues. So nobody's perfect, but we have to pick the right one. AK Gunner says, Party statistically had a great game yesterday, so my eye test was wrong on this occasion. Watch the game again. And him and Elneny were very good defensively, and tactics should be used in all top 6 away games. I mean, that's what we did at Old Trafford, and it worked. I think a lot of times Party can fail my eye test as well sometimes. Most of the time I can see what he's doing, but other times I'm like, what the heck is he doing? But statistically he was good. And when I rewatched the game, he looked a lot better than he did in the first. I think when you're watching the game, you're just so like, what the heck is going on? That sometimes you do have to watch it back to see what actually happened. And they were really good together. Shoel says, Basuma, Max Aarons, and a proper number 10, 3 signings Arsenal need to make. I agree. Maybe not at number 10. For me, it's more of just an attacking midfielder, another attacking player. It depends on what that looks like in the system that Arteta wants to play. Again, we don't know. He's switched from kind of like a 4-2-3-1 to some sort of midfield 3 with more of like an 8 type of system. So whatever that looks like, it could be an attacking midfielder. It could be an attacking another forward. I don't know what it is, but we need another player to score goals. I think that's what I'm looking for. Richard says, is Party really box to box? Where is the evidence he can't shoot? Being a box to box midfielder doesn't mean that you necessarily contribute with goals. Sometimes a box to box midfielder, Ramsey is a box to box midfielder, but so is Thomas Partey. There's different types. You could say that there's a difference between Madison and maybe, there's different types of players. Like Willock can play 10 and so can Odegaard, but they can play it in different ways. So I think box to box is the type of player that you are, but you can play it in different ways. So he is box to box, and box to box doesn't necessarily mean that you're Ramsey and you contribute goals. So I think, I don't really know how to answer that besides just saying that he is box to box. There's a lot of evidence to suggest that. And the determining element of whether you're box to box doesn't necessarily mean that you score goals. Dave says, Awa is a good time player. When the team is not playing well, he does not play well. Definitely heard that before. Bowie, I'll see you next time. Thank you for coming. And Yo-Yo says box to box has nothing to do with shooting. Players who progress the ball play. Yo-Yo, you need your own podcast because you explain it better than I do. Where's your podcast, Yo-Yo? I would happily subscribe. All right, you guys, that's going to be it for today. I'm going to go watch some football, relax in my big, ugly sweater, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow. And, same thing tomorrow, probably just another news stream that just turns into a live Q&A. You know how we do around here. And I'll keep you guys updated on the How We Fix Arsenal or How to Fix Arsenal series that we'll be doing for the next couple of months throughout the summer. I'm also going to start a series called Happy Hour, where I discuss Arsenal memories and do some Arsenal trivia with some of your favorite podcasters and content creators. So if you have suggestions of who you'd like to see on the show, you can always DM me on Twitter. And or put it in the comment section when we leave here. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, guys, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye, y'all.